Sometimes you just need to turn off the distractions, get to work, and find the universal truths that affect us all and that govern our universe. This is a good place to do that. Mark Foltz and Kat Hobson will try to help with that a bit by bringing fantastic guests. Let's see what's happening tonight.
Welcome to Universal Truth with Mark Foltz, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm coming to you from my tiny little house near Pensacola, Florida. And my prayers are out to anyone that's in hurricane weather. We were very lucky to miss it. But we have been dealing with Mercury in retrograde, so we have had to postpone this show twice. So now tonight I've been dying to do this show. So you're going to have to bear with me as I try to get it all squeezed into this program. And tonight is going to be about death omens, death spirits, premonitions. And I'll use examples of people I know and my own experiences and experiences that happened around the globe that got me interested in premonition work and what causes it, how does it happen, what triggers it, why are we getting warnings, how are we getting warnings, how does time kind of work, and how it works within. I'm going to try and explain the death process, how the brain works, how the consciousness works, how the spirit works, and then how we fit in to death as much as we fit into life. You know, the brain coordinates your death. You know, it coordinates how to get your energy downloaded and out before the body quits. So we're going to go into a lot of that. So before I have to tell people, if you want to catch me live in person, you can catch me in person at Live and Let Live Metaphysical Store, 4622 Softly Field Road in Pensacola. I'm usually there a couple of afternoons in the week, but I'm really always there Friday from about 2 to 7, Saturday from 11 to 7. And if you are coming into town, you want to catch me, call in to Live and Let Live and tell them that you're coming from out of town. Try to do the day before. And that way, if I can, I'll be there if I'm not there already. And while you're there, you know, I'm one of the readers that is there, and there's Tony Talley, Terry O'Connor, and we're all 60 years old. We've all have a lot of experience, and if you need metaphysical needs, Sal Gandolfo and Matthew Ferguson can hook you up to anything you need. We have rocks, we have crystals, we have incense, and all of it. So it's a great place. It's one of the wildest stores I've ever worked in. So If you want a metaphysical experience, that's the place where you need to take a whirl. Now, I'm going to start off on this because I've been talking to my cousin and stuff about things my mother was doing when she was dying and my father was doing when he was dying, things I experienced when I was dying, when I was attacked 30 years ago. And in my case, I experienced Death Omens, spirits. That's kind of their thing. But a Death Omen spirit or energy is different than death spirits of people who you knew, or they know you, or they're from your past life, or they're from this life. They're spirits that are already in the consciousness. They're on the other side. And those are death spirits, people who you know or they know you. The Death Omens are usually a little different. So I will try to explain to you through because premonitions, my family has really been very big on premonitions. And my grandmother, my mother's mother, who was so psychic, she had several experiences that I just find, top notch, top grade. But unfortunately, they were about sad things. And they were very sad, traumatic experiences in her life. But she had the ability to know. She was just so open and so psychic. And we'll cover that. So I'm going to try and start by describing the consciousness. Now, and I'm doing it from my perspective because when I was dying, I got to go up the tunnel, the dendrite that goes up to the consciousness, and I got to get up over the lip, and because they were processing, and there's a process to it. If I died, I would have just kept on going. I wouldn't have come back. But since I didn't die, I got to come back. But when I was up there, I was already downloading. So you kind of start to expand. And so when you come back with more information. You pick it up like static electricity. And so it's very interesting. So I'm going to try and explain some of the function metaphysically, what goes into it. And then I'm going to take you through stories, personal stories, about omens and, why we have them and how we can get a little better maybe at doing it, because you really just need to open yourself enough that you don't need to open yourself so wide that all you hear is information. But I'm going to tell you about the consciousness itself. Now, the consciousness is in a dimensional layer very close to us. And, people, I think we're like the computer. We're the computer. We have all the information. We're not the computer. We are little satellites that come from the consciousness, that come from the pool of energy. And the soul is from a pool of that energy. It's an old, ancient information that helps come into our bodies to give us pre-knowledge. So we come into this life with a little bit of support, a little bit of a start, and then we have to develop our bodies to allow the spirit and the soul to develop to their best ability. And when I look at it, to me, it's like our soul is the eternal flame. It comes from this pool of energy, this consciousness, this giant thing of color, of thoughts. And the consciousness is hungry. So it sends us into life to learn and to bring back more information. So the soul is like a sliver of this gold. It looks like a toothpick sliver of energy, but it comes from the pool, and it has a little tether, a little fiber optic tether that comes with it, and it just looks like it's on a fiber optic cord. Now, people call it your silver cord, but to me it looks a little bit goldish. But that soul, when it's going to come into life, it waits for the baby that's going to be you. And as the baby is starting to come through the canal, that little gold sliver of soul information on its little cord comes down through the dendrite from the consciousness, and it meets the baby's body, goes through the umbilical cord, and that's why your cord comes from your solar plexus, comes from your umbilical cord. The cord goes through your cord and goes into the body. So let's consider the body an envelope, a mineral envelope. The soul is another envelope that goes inside of the body envelope. So you have the body, then you have the soul. Now, once it's in your body, then what you do, who you create, becomes the spirit, the person that your consciousness becomes. That soul has some information in it and some personality and some past life stuff, but they're there to help you like a training wheel. Then you become who you are, and that's our spirit. And so it's the body, the soul, and then it's your spirit. And once we die, we come into this world, we've got that little cord. We come in, we live, and then when we die, there's a process that takes us back to the consciousness. And we follow the little silver cord or gold cord that is the soul. It goes right back up into the consciousness. And we're supposed to, spirit-wise, our spirit is supposed to follow that and go back into the pool of consciousness. And then when we get up there, they absorb what we learned in this life, and that becomes like a book of information going into the library. So that's why it's really important. They send us out like it's you feel like it's a football game. You're going in, you're going to try and go for the football. Then you come back, and they go, what did you learn? And it doesn't matter if you succeeded or failed. They just want whatever that was. Now, where we get hung up is we go, well, I'm not finished, or I didn't do what I want to do, or and the worst thing I think is when I hear people say, I'm not finished, I'm not ready, because we have to, when we go, we don't have a choice. You know, you can hang around as a soul or spirit and be lost or trying to fix something that you can't fix. So when we go, we really have to just go directly into the other side, take our information, say goodbye to everybody, and run to the other side and get in there before the body quits. So it's kind of a timed game. We want to go into life. We want to learn. We want to experience. We go out. We go back and they say, what did you learn? What did you bring? Bring it to me. And that's our purpose. And we keep coming back, coming in, going out, coming back. It's like almost like sewing. It's like this little thread just comes out of the consciousness, goes into a baby, comes back when the person dies, and brings all that information. And it's just a constant. It's like almost even, to me, the way it feels to me, like when I was dying, it's kind of like if you're standing in the ocean and you feel the undertow pulling at you. And it pushes against you, and then it pulls and tries to pull you into the consciousness. And, you know, if it's successful, then you go from where you're at, you get pulled through to, like the tides, you just get pulled back to where you came from. Because we come from the consciousness. We come with information that we don't realize we have. And it's up to us to look at our lives, look at our bodies, go inside, open up that information, see who we are, you know, bring our ancient self in, because the soul is very ancient. And we have so much in our DNA, everybody, even the little redneck like me from Chattanooga, Tennessee. In my Akashic, I have Egyptian information. Why would a little redneck from Chattanooga have Egyptian information? But that is part of what's in everyone's brain. It goes past Egyptian, Assyrian, Sumerian, and beyond, because there's more places than us. And the consciousness goes further than just us. And if you think about all the people that have come and gone, just the trillions of people, then all of that information is in our lives and in the universe, and we're swimming through it, and we're living in it, and we're learning from it, and we're getting infected with it. We're getting, you know, sometimes it's good information, sometimes it's bad. Sometimes it's neutral. But that's how I'm going to start the show. Think about us, that we come from a consciousness. The persons that you are now, you came from that consciousness. And you came into this life. And you came to learn something. Or to just experience. And maybe you conquer something, maybe you don't. And then when you go back, you go, oh, I could have had a V8. You know, I could have done this. I could have done that. So let me go do it again. Let me go try again. Let me go become an artist. Let me conquer this money thing. Let me conquer poverty. Let me conquer love and relationships. Let me go find my soulmate who's out there that I've known before, you know, and we're still looking for each other in the fog. And let me go and try to do that. Because we're really, even though we're little spirits, when we look around, it's like little lights on a foggy street. So you have to develop who you are, and you have to have a direct connection to the consciousness. And at some point, we learn, we go, we come back, we go back. So now we have to go to a commercial. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. I'll be right back.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? Well, you see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the labor. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Universal Truths. This is Mark Foltz coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm calling you from my cute little home near Pensacola, Florida. And it is Mercury in retrograde, so everything can possibly happen, will happen while we're online probably. So hopefully you'll be able to hear me. Now, we're talking tonight about Death Omens. I have to do the death experience to explain Death Omens and Death Spirits. And before we went to break, we were talking about, we're in the consciousness. The soul comes out on a little cord, goes into our body, goes into life, learns everything, then we die and we come back to the consciousness. And we follow the little cord of the soul back to where it comes from. So that's how we get back to the consciousness. And now, being clever people, we can make it very difficult. We can go, oh, I'm not finished. Oh, wait, what? And then not go with the consciousness. And then have to stay here, but then the body dies. The body is an envelope. So remember I said the body is an envelope. The soul is an envelope that fits in that envelope. Then the spirit fits into that. So what happens if you, spirit-wise, your personality Your spirit, you have your spirit, but your personality is embedded in it. It's your drive. And if your personality goes, I'm not going there, then the soul will go on back up to where it needs to at some point. The body, when it dies, it ceases to function. It becomes sick and it begins to deteriorate. So it falls away. But because your spirit is vibrating in energy, it separates from the body. So the body envelope falls to the side. So the spirit is there functioning, and it's going, okay, you know, eventually if you don't function well or you don't understand how to feed yourself, it will thicken up a little bit because our spirits are made out of electromagnetic plasma. And eventually, if you don't find food sources for this to keep the spirit vibrating and keep the plasma functional and fluid, it will thicken up, and then it will break down, and then you'll get reabsorbed into the consciousness, but you'll just go to it through a different avenue. You'll just get absorbed. And then it'll take your spirit wherever it needs to. The information will go. The spirit will go where it needs to go. And there you are. You know, you will get over there at some point. It may just take a long time, depending upon how stubborn the spirit is, because the spirit has its own mind. And our personalities are so strong, sometimes we go against our better interest. So, but if the spirit is staying and it understands that to eat, it has to find energy. So since it's an electromagnetic plasma and it has chloroplast in our cells and it has chloroplast in the spirit, I know I've covered this before, but I'm going to cover it again. We have chloroplast. So our spirit, who can become like a ghost, or does become our ghost, has to find a way to eat. So they'll get around thermal heat. People, you know, if it's someone who wants to scare someone, they'll scare them. They'll put out thermal heat. The spirit will absorb it. Or you can just be around, someone's thermal heat energy they have, but you could be around central heating. You can find energy from the sun. So, you know, from light. And so that kind of makes a spirit like a solar light. Think of a solar light. The solar light is off during the day. It just absorbs energy. Then when it becomes dark, ding, it turns on. And our spirits do the same thing. They absorb this energy during the daytime when it's real busy, and it's not. It's just not our time. Basically, they just absorb energy, and then when it's nighttime and there's less activity, and they can sort of be who they are, they're like the solar light that is absorbed all this energy during the day. Then ding, they're on at night. Hence why we see ghosts at night more than we do during the day. Doesn't mean they don't function in the day, but they're kind of like a solar light. A lot of them just absorb, and then they kind of wake up when, at certain times, whatever triggers them. And it may be if they're living at home, you know, when people get home for the evening, and because during the day, most people are out of the home, they're at jobs, they're doing. At night, everybody goes home, goes to bed, goes to eat and sleep and gather. And so that's one reason why you get more activity at night. And then because it's quieter, sometimes they might be busy all day, but that's when we see them. When it's a little calmer and a little cooler and a little, you know, you can pay more attention to them. And that's kind of how we function in the way that I can explain it. So now we have the life and the death process. Now, I've told you before, when I was attacked and died and did the near-death experiences, you have the you go through a process that seems to be typical for everybody. Now, when I started going through the major one, I experienced, the lights, the people, the downloading, the pull of being drawn to go up the android or what looked like a tunnel to go up to the consciousness, which I got up to the top edge of it. And if I died, I'd just gone on. Well, now scientifically, they have some things going on where they can explain some of that. And I'll do the scientific stuff and then tie it into what we have as our experience. Now, think this has been going on however long people have been going on. When they die, they have this experience. It's not new to us. And, but there was a man that was going through an EKG or whatever you want to, EKG. And he was being tested because he was having seizures. And when they were looking at that, he was in the machine and he died while he was having the scan done. And when he died, they were able to see the activity in his brain. And then they were able to say, this explains some of what happens. So if you put in life recall, you'll bring up that article. And it's really what happens, because when I was dying and I started seeing dead people, and there was a dead person sitting next to my bed waiting for me to go, and then I could see a light a little bit distance from me. It's like you have like a little distance between you and them. That's because they're on the other side. They're in the consciousness. They're in the place you have to get to. But you feel like you've got like a ditch in between you and them. You're standing there looking at them, hearing them, feeling that feeling, like I said, like the tide. You're feeling they call your name and you just vibrate and you feel like you're being pulled by the tide to go to them. And what happens then while that's happening, you see all this stuff downloading. You see your brain downloading. You see like phosphorescent letters and all this information just downloading into sheets of plasma, like it's downloading really quick because your brain's trying to get the information downloaded and out before you die. And in this EKG, where this man was being looked at, 30 seconds before the heart stopped and 30 seconds after the heart stopped. So where I was at in the dying process, I was the 30 seconds before the heart stopped. And when that's happening, they're downloading you, they're getting you ready. It's like you're putting you in a cannon and they're about to shoot you up a tube. And, and the process, of course, you have your third eye, you have your hypothalamus and the pituitary gland regulating what you're doing. So you're really kind of at the pituitary gland. It feels like you're on a little concrete platform, but you're really at the pituitary gland, which is sending information, sending that signal. The body coordinates, the brain coordinates your death. It's trying to get you out of the body before it does. And even if something happened where you didn't have a head, you still have your spirit has all of it. It's a complete copy of your body. So even if you didn't have the head there, the spirit is still a plasma form, and it will continue to download to get you into the other side. So, but it's working really hard. And these dead people on the other side are saying, come here, come here, come here, come to me. And your soul its little cord, its little fiber optic starts to go up the tube, and it goes ahead of you. You see it going ahead of you and over the top, and it goes back where it goes. And it goes back to that big pull of light. And so you're just left to follow it. You're magnetically wanting to follow it. And so you're starting to feel that. And if you're not stubborn and you're not, or you're, some people are afraid that light means punishment because we've been taught so much, you're going to go to hell. So a lot of times they think, oh, it's not that kind of thing. The feeling is, what did you learn? And that really surprised me because the consciousness, the question coming from the consciousness wasn't, oh, have you been a good person? Have you been a good boy or been a bad boy? It was, what did you learn? And I was at the first 30 seconds before the heart stopped. And they were all waiting, and then it paused. And then when I didn't die, then the second mechanism didn't follow through. If I had died, the second blast, like they saw on the EKG, would have happened, and I would have just been dead, and I've been gone. And, and that would be all she wrote. Then the spirit would have been gone and absorbed into the consciousness with all the information, and it would be like being a new, giving them a book of knowledge, and they would read that knowledge. They would absorb it, they understand it, it makes new thought. And so it's very interesting. But it's not anything like what I was ever raised to believe, and which is very strange, so, but like I said, I've known people. There was one guy that died. He was very young. He's married and everything, but he was sitting there telling his wife, said, I'm not ready. I'm not finished. And I thought, I really don't think that's a good, when I heard that was in the 80s. And I thought, that's just such a terrible, sad thing, really, that they're not ready to go on. And I know sometimes we're not ready, but when it's happening, it's happening. And if it's going to happen to you, you don't really have much say in it. And if it doesn't happen to you, I had no control over it. I mean, I was going into it. I wasn't ready or finished, but I wasn't going, I'm not ready. I just was like, oh, Lord, here we go. Oh, Lord, here we go. And, then you feel like you're about to you're in a car that's being driven, that you don't have any more control over that car than the man in the moon. You're just waiting for, to catch the subway to go up the 2. And if you catch it, then you're over there. And we're coming up pretty soon on a break. So when we come back on the break, I'm not ready to go quite yet. But I'm going to start saying, when I come back, I want to talk a little bit about premonitions and omens. And what do Death Omen spirits mean? Why are we saying a death omen? And what does it mean to, sometimes for some people? And then some people just have a good premonition. My mother had a very strong one that saved my sister from a horrific trauma. And I've had premonitions I just didn't before, and they were happening to me before my death experience. And I would see things, but I didn't know what to do about them. So when I would tell people, this is going to happen, and it would happen, then they kind of look at me and go, I think they thought I was causing it. And it wasn't. I was just so open, I was picking up the information. Because we, as tools, basically, as spirits, we are in dimensional hallways, which are made of electromagnetic bands that are created by the earth. So they make hallways, and we're in these hallways. And we're an energy in this electromagnetic field hallway. And there's a fluid that fits in it, which time is part of that fluid. And so we're in this fluid like it's like water rushing past us. And it's time. So, but we're so thick, it takes us a while to absorb it, to pick it up, and for it to happen. So the time flies by, it flows past us a little bit. And then sometimes that's where the spirits are going, oh, we can tell them this is happening, get ready. And then you get messages from spirits, or you get messages from spirits that are on the outer edge that are absorbing information. If you're dying or your situation is deteriorating, some spirits come and absorb some of the material you're putting off. Because think about how oil is made. Oil is made from dead plants, dead trees that degraded, and they sunk into the earth and it became oil. Our information, our energy does the same thing. It's like it's fresh, and then all of a sudden it begins to deteriorate and it becomes a sludge, and then we're functioning and wading through this sludgy information from millions and trillions of people. So time kind of flows past us, and sometimes these spirits and these energies see it. And when they see it, then they tell us. Or sometimes they're telling us and we can hear them. And they're warning us of impending danger, impending doom. And if we're perceptive and we pick it up, we may pick up some of it, which has happened to me. And then sometimes we're clueless. And then we know something's going to happen, but we don't know what it is, but you just batten down the hatches. And then hopefully you'll live through it, or you'll, be able to function through it. And, but I've had both. I've had it where I've been able to warn somebody and save their life. I've been in it when, before my attack, I was, knew something was going to happen. I just didn't know what until the attack started, and I went, oh, that's it, but I had to go through the attack to become who I am. So they were letting me know to batten down the hatches, and I couldn't have escaped that if I tried. So it's just something that I had to go through. So, but we'll come back and talk more about death omens, death spirits, the who we are, how we're created, using this stuff, and why we get this information, and so we'll go back to that. I think it's time for a break. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Universal Truth. This is Mark Fultz coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm talking to you from my beautiful tiny home near Pensacola, Florida. And we're talking death spirits, death omens, premonitions, and you know, how it all kind of works for us. Why do we get all this stuff? So we can function, you know. Well, in the old days, before we thought we became so smart, people just took it for granted that, you know, you would have premonitions to tell you so you'd be ready for something that happened. And it was a good warning system. And it wasn't anything scary or, you know, always. You know, it might be something scary coming, but, you know, be prepared, you know, or to get something done. I was just talking with Kat Hobson, and we were discussing, you know, we're trained to be so afraid of death in the modern world. And really, before my attack, I was scared of death. You know, I was scared of it. It was the unknown factor. Now that I've gone through the near-death experience, I'm not scared of death. The way I look at death now is a great incentive. It's like, all right, I'm 60, so before I die, what do I want to get done? So I'm trying to get everything I want done, so that when it's my time, I don't worry about that. Because when I was dying before, I hadn't accomplished very much at all, and I wasn't real worried about that when I was dying. But I was, you know, like, oh, you know, I wish I did have that done. Then I would have come back into life, trying to replicate and redo what I didn't get to do before. So what I'm using death now as is, all right, before something happens to me, let me get all this stuff done. So I'm doing my album, I'm doing books, I'm doing the radio show, the podcast, I'm doing videos, I'm doing all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, you know, my main thing is to have fun and do it and entertain people and get it out there. And hopefully some people who listen to me, you'll get over being afraid of death. Look, because we're all going to die. And in the modern world, you know, we're just not taught that it's okay. It's like we have our spring, our summer, and then our fall, and then the winter. And then the winter, that's when everything dies. And then spring comes again. And we're like that. We're born in the spring. We live. If we are lucky enough to get into the autumn of our lives, to get older, then when it's winter, it's time for us to go. And then we are like a seed planted into the ground. And the body, the envelope, deteriorates and goes into the ground. But the soul and the spirit are seeds, and then we re-blossom, come back into life, and have our moment, have our life, then go back to seed, and then come back again. So it's not goodbye when anyone dies. Like I said before, we're like a little eternal flame. They may be out of your sight, but who they were is still around, is still functioning, is still there. And when you start to die, you feel them, you see them. And sometimes you see them before you die. Now, those are usually good things to experience. I will talk. I'll give you some things that happen when people start to die. We start to get, sometimes you'll see things, you'll see people. And one of my friends was a hospice nurse, or my roommate, and he was at this woman and man's house. The man was dying from cancer. And the woman, when she learned that, his roommate was a psychic, she says, I have something to tell you. She says, this woman appears to me, and she appears to me in the kitchen when I'm usually doing dishes. And she appears to me and she says, where's your broom? And then she would disappear. And she had done it 2 or 3 times. And she says, what am I going to do? And I told her, I said, well, she doesn't like the way you're cleaning. So just, so the next time she saw her, the woman appeared, said, where's your broom? And she says, well, I don't know where yours is, but mine's over in the corner. Have at it, And the woman disappeared and she didn't see her again. And the husband, he didn't see that, the one that was dying, but he was seeing an orb that was going through the house, a big, like kind of like a saucer, cup and saucer sized orb going through the house. And he asked her if she'd seen it, and she had. And I said, well, that's just spirits. That's the way they really look. We look like little balls of energy, and then another person's aura scans that information, and you perceive what that person looks like. But I said it's very common near death, and they were agreeing, seeing it, and they got over being afraid, and he died within about 2 weeks. My mother, when she was getting ready to die, she started seeing her sisters who had passed on. All of her family was gone. She was 89. Everyone was dead. There had been 10 brothers and sisters. I mean, like 6 sisters, 4 brothers. The mother and the father, Pappy and Granny, were all gone. And she started talking to them, her sisters. And she asked them if it hurt to die, because my mother was very scared of death. She had sat with people over and over. She had sat with so many people when they died, and I thought she would not be as afraid of it, because it wasn't bad. But she was panicked. And one time when she was sleeping and she was getting close to death, she had a dream, and she started screaming, Mark, call 911, get me out of this ditch, which really bothered me. But a week later, when she started talking to her sisters who had been dead for several years, and she asked them if it hurt to die, and they went, no, and she got better over it. And I said, well, really, it doesn't hurt, because when you get past the body function, it's not bad. You feel great. Your spirit has no body to filter through. It's amazing, amazing, amazing. And then you're hearing these people calling you, and you kind of know them, and you kind of feel this love thing. And that's something, too. The brain coordinates a lot of things. It coordinates all of that flashing of the life recall, your life flashes before you. They call that the gamma oscillation, which that's the part of your brain where meditation and music, past life, memory or just memory is. And when you're dying and that flashes and it downloads, it happens to everybody, that's called gamma oscillation. And it's the part of gamma oscillation where it means your brain cells are shooting off real quick, because your brain's trying to overwork and get everything downloaded, get it out, because it already has a job to do. And it gets it downloaded, gets you out, gets you on to the other side, and then it separates from the body. The body dies, and the spirit and the soul will go on their merry way. And my mother, when she was ready, she didn't wasn't ready to go yet. She was supposed to die within 2 days. 3 weeks later, we were sitting there, and she got to where the last few times I talked to her before, she had a terrible fever and it burned her brain up, basically. But she wouldn't go. And the nurses came in and said she's holding and waiting for someone. Now, my nephews who were challenged couldn't come see her because they just couldn't handle it. And my oldest brother wasn't able to come. Kind of the same thing. So the nurse said, call them and get them to talk to her. And I said, you got it. I called them immediately, got them to talk to her. She made a little noise. And then that night she died. And right before she had lost her consciousness, really quit talking, doing all that stuff, she was talking to the spirits in a room, and she had this absolutely beautiful smile. And you just feel this glow around her. And then the nurses came in to turn her, and she just immediately, she really looked dead. So for the last week, she looked dead. She was still alive. But what happened is that beautiful, when she was smiling and happy, that really the soul had left. It went at that moment. But because she was being stubborn, the consciousness, her personality was holding on, going, I'm worried about Clayton. I'm worried about David. I'm worried about Robin. So when she heard from them and they told them they were all right, she could go, then the personality let go. So the soul had already left the building. Elvis had left the building. But she was holding on. And the way she died is the way I will probably die, which is her aorta split. And I have bar fans, and that's the way a lot of us die. And so I got to see what that process is like. So the thing in our modern world, we need to get over being afraid of death and letting that be a hindrance. I'm using death as, all right, I got to get this stuff packed before I go on a trip. So how am I going to get this done? And I get what I need done. And then when it comes again, I just get to go on the trip. I don't have to worry about, I didn't say this, I didn't do this. And it's going to happen to everybody. So try not to be afraid, because we never die. The little spark, the little flame that makes us, it never dies. And it's always waiting for us. And I tell people, when someone dies, think about it like they went on vacation. And then when you get to go on vacation, you're going to see them again. Take my word for it. And they come running like cheerleaders at a football game. You know, they're coming, they want you. They're cheering for you. They're wanting you to listen to them. They're trying to get you over on the other side. So remember that before death, it's fantastic. The other part stinks. But when it gets past the bad part, it's the best thing, the best way I've ever felt. And just love. Love. And in the process, too, I was going to tell you, when the brain is trying to coordinate you going, we have that oxytocin that the hypothalamus produces, which it's in us and animals, but if you think about it like cats, cats produce oxytocin and they bond and they love their kittens. We have children, so we bond and love our children because of the oxytocin. It makes us warm and lovely. And when we die, we produce oxytocin. So we're going into a feeling of love. Now, we have to go to a break, but we'll be right back. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. In Florida, nearly 1.5 million homes and businesses are now without power. That's as Hurricane Ian batters the South Gulf Coast after making landfall today near Punta Gorda. The Category 4 storm now has maximum sustained winds of 130 miles an hour. NPR's Liz Baker reports from St. Petersburg. That's not the wind, but the water that has officials most worried right now.
Photos and video on Twitter show cars underwater in the streets and seawater whitecaps lashing at second-floor windows of homes. The storm surge swamped Sanibel Island and coastal communities like Fort Myers Beach and Naples. Many more areas are under flash flood warnings, as Ian's predicted 10 to 15 inches of rain fall on waterlogged ground and overflow the rivers. More than 1 million customers are already without power. This storm is taking the same path as Hurricane Charlie did in 2004, another Category 4 hurricane, but one dwarfed by the nearly 250-mile-wide Ian. Liz Baker, NPR News, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, meanwhile, says the storm surge has likely peaked, but expects damage to be widespread across the state. The Department of Veterans Affairs says it will provide emergency abortions to civilians if necessary, even in states where the procedure is banned under state law. As NPR's Sarah McCammon reports, the VA recently announced it would provide abortion care in certain cases in response to the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
In states with abortion bans now in effect, patients experiencing medical emergencies related to pregnancy have been denied abortions by doctors afraid of violating those laws. Asked about pregnant civilians who might come into Veterans Affairs emergency rooms, VA Undersecretary for Health Dr. Sharif El-Nahal says doctors have the authority to intervene in a variety of urgent situations.
We do not wait for confirmation of veteran status. We have the ability and do save the person's life.
This month, the VA announced it would begin offering counseling for patients considering abortion and would provide the procedure in cases of rape or incest or to protect a patient's health or life. Sarah McCammon, NPR News.
The European Union says gas leaks found in Russian pipelines in the Baltic Sea are most likely the result of sabotage. Terry Schultz reports from Brussels.
EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says all available information points to deliberate acts being responsible for damage to underwater gas pipelines that run from Russia to Germany. Experts say there were explosions in the Baltic Sea before 3 leaks were found in the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. Although they aren't delivering gas to Europe due to sanctions on Russia over its war on Ukraine, the pipes are full of fuel, which is now leaking. Swedish police have asked the public prosecutor to open an investigation into the cause of the damage. For NPR News, I'm Terry Schultz in Brussels.
On Wall Street, the Dow was up 548 points today. You're listening to NPR News in Washington. Several candidates who ran for Navajo Nation president in the tribe's August primary are continuing to question the accuracy of the results. As member station KNAU's Ryan Heinches reports, they allege widespread irregularities and are calling for a revote.
The candidates say a recent recount of the nearly 50,000 primary votes found many unopened ballots. They allege dozens of discrepancies and say the voting machines used were aging and unreliable. Former Navajo Attorney General Ethel Branch is among the candidates calling for a revote.
This is not just a simple situation where a few people's vote didn't get counted. This is an entire system that is not working.
Branch and other candidates are requesting major reforms, citing concerns about ballot security and other election procedures. They plan to file an official grievance Friday. Election officials have certified the primary and are moving ahead with the November general election. They did not immediately respond to a request for comment. For NPR News, I'm Ryan Heinches in Flagstaff, Arizona.
A lawyer representing Tesla's CEO Elon Musk is accusing U.S. securities regulators of essentially muzzling his client. In documents appealing a lower court decision, Musk's lawyer accused the Securities and Exchange Commission of violating Musk's free speech rights. The filing contends the SEC is continually trying to enforce a 2018 settlement and has chilled Musk's rights to speech with the threat of investigations and prosecution. Under that settlement, Musk and Tesla each agreed to pay $20 million in civil fines. Crude oil futures prices moved higher today, oil ending the session up $3.65 a barrel to settle at $82.15 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News in Washington.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Universal Truth with Mark Fultz coming to you from WBHM-DB. in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama, and also coming to you from my little tiny home near Pensacola, Florida. Now, tonight we're talking premonitions, omens, death spirits, and how our spirits kind of work, and why we get information from spirits, and why they warn us, I guess, because they can. And I'm going to talk about premonitions to begin with. The first time I became aware of premonitions, or what they were, I used to, and when I was 8 and 10, I started reading all these metaphysical books. And I loved anything mystical or spooky, or, ghost stories. And during, at that time, that'd been 1970, 1972. And so I started just absorbing all of these books on, mysteries and ghosts and all of this stuff. And there was one story that I remember. The event happened in 1966, so I was alive during then, but I was 4 years old, so I don't remember it from then, but I do remember it from being 10 years old. And it was a story about Aberfan, which was a little Welsh mining town, and it was coal mining, so they had a big, what they call a coal tip, which was, they just had this huge sludge. It was a mountain itself. It was like 100 and something feet tall, but it was on top of the tip of a mountain. So the mountain had a big black tip, and hence coal tip. And it was over this town. And in October 21st, 1966, all the kids it was going to be a special day. The kids were supposed to get off on like a break. So they only had to go to school half a day. So, kids, they're just thrilled. They're going to have a week to play and do. So they were so excited. They just had to go through till like noon. And so they were in school and happy and, full of energy. And about 9:15, it had been raining. And the coal tip moved. And it became a landslide. And it rushed down the mountain. And it swallowed the school. It swallowed farms and people. There was one boy, a teenager, who was working in the mines, from the mines. He was running, trying to get to his mother's house to get his mother and his brother, and he got covered and killed by the avalanche, and his mother and brother got killed in the avalanche. And within just seconds, the school was gone. And they began digging in, and they were able to save a few children. But 116 children and 28 adults died. And this stuff, it was vicious. I mean, it was just vicious. If it got you, there were children still sitting in their desk, just buried alive. And there were people who were in the rooms who didn't even get mud on them, that they were asphyxiated because it just took out all of the oxygen. But most of them were crushed or suffocated, or, it was just horrifying. And I was 10, so I was in the age group. There were a lot of these children who were, from first grade up. And they went up into teenagehood. So there were kids that were, anywhere from 6 to 16 who were killed. And it actually decimated. There were no more children hardly. There were some that survived. But it was like the city, all of the children were gone. And the ones that were alive, the parents of the live children were upset, and knew it upset the other ones that their children lived and the other people's children died. So there was survival guilt and there was all this stuff going on. But I remember reading this. So there was the thing that started it when I was reading it, and then I read later, because there was this little girl. There was this picture of her, and it told about the omens, the premonition she had. And I remember, and I find that picture, and it haunts me to this day. And it's a place I have to go to. I've written a song that's kind of a memorial to it. It's like, I want to go there. I feel like, and I have a lot of Welsh in my genetics. And sometimes it'll hit, if I've been hit before with just crying jugs over. And I'm like, I've never been there. I don't know anybody there. But I am Welsh. I have Welsh, English, Dutch, Irish, but I have a Welsh. And I feel this connection to it. So there was this man, John Barker, who had heard this story that one of the little boys that survived the avalanche, he survived it. But later that night, he died from fright. Even though he was safe at home, he died from fright. So he considered this psychic death. So he started doing a book. And he was a member of Britain's Society for Physical Research, parapsychology kind of stuff. And the more he got into it, he collected all of these stories of people who had premonitions, and they had, witnesses, when they would tell them, because they were having these horrible dreams and telling people like a week before this happened. But the ones that we'll look at right now, Paul Davies, who was a little 8-year-old boy, he was drawing a picture the night before, and he drew a picture of the mountain with the coal tip, the school, and the bus at the school. And I've seen the picture online. And I think he was, I can't remember if he'd drawn that the mountain had come down on it or they were digging into the mountain where the school was. But I think the school was covered in this black stuff. And he drew on the picture the end. And that was the day before he was killed in the school avalanche. Now, the little girl that haunted me, her name was Earl Mae Jones, 10-year-old little girl. And 2 weeks before the accident, she woke up and came in and told her mother, "I'm not afraid to die." And her mother said, you're a young girl. You're not, she was 10 years old. She says, "You don't have to worry about dying. You're going to live a long time." And then the next week, the day before the accident, she had a horrible dream. And she woke up and she went to her mother and goes, "Mommy," or she called her Mummy. "Mummy, let me tell you my dream." And the mother was going, "I'm too busy, dear. Tell me later." She goes, "No, you have to listen to me." And she said, "I went to the school and there was no school there. Something black had come down all over it." And she went to school the next morning and she was killed sitting at her desk. And there were people all around who were going to the psychiatrists and stuff, having these dreams about this black stuff covering the children, and they couldn't save the children. And it was just terrible stuff, terrible. And that was, the children predicted their own death. Nobody had any clue. They knew it was a danger, but they didn't have any clue this could really happen. And but there were adults who all over the place who were just telling people, had witnesses. So this man put these into a collection, into a book, and it just was amazing. And actually, the Queen, the series, did a thing about Aberfan because it happened, and then the Queen didn't go immediately because she felt like, and reasonably so, she thought, if I show up there, they're going to be worried about paying attention to the Queen and not digging out children. But people blamed her for not showing up right then. And when she did go, she did go. The family did go, and they paid homage, and they did. But that was something that haunted her. She went back there many times because it really got into her psyche. She couldn't have done anything about it. And if she had gone, they would have trampled over her. Instead of looking for the children. The press that was there was just terrible. These families had monstrous things to go through. And but I was fascinated with the premonition about it. And so that began, I remember that being my consciousness, because I thought, I'm old enough, I would have been in that, if I were in that school, I was their ages. And I related to it that way. And then I was very upset at the story. And as a child, you want to help people. And then you realize, I can't help them. It's already happened. You can't do anything. But see, a premonition sometimes can keep you from the horrible thing happening. Sometimes, very rarely. Mostly it's premonition, you sense it, but you don't know what to do with it. And it's going to happen to you. Like I said, before I was going to die, I had premonitions. And now I will talk about, for a couple minutes, for our break, I started having Death Omens, which that's different than death spirits, the people who've lived that are dead. I had a spirit that was pursuing me, trying to let me know something was going on. And I would be at a friend's house, and I was going to go to my other friend's house, and I didn't tell the person I was at where I was going, where I lived. And I got in the car to leave, and she got a phone call, and the person said, "Is Mark left yet?" Which I was in the middle of nowhere. And she goes, "Who is this?" And click. Then 10 minutes before I got to where I was going, those people didn't know I was coming to see them. They got a phone call, "Is Mark there yet?" And they said, "He's not here. He's not coming today. Who is this?" Click. Then I drove as soon as they were putting the phone down, I drove into their driveway. And I knew something was up. I knew something was coming, but I wasn't sharp enough yet to know what. So I was looking for something to happen. I was trying to stay out of the way of everything. But then when the attack started, it was a random act of violence. And when it started, I went, oh, my goodness, this is it. This is what they were warning me. But it didn't keep me from being in that spot at the right time. At the wrong time, at the right time. And so, but I knew it happened. So, and two, I always was fascinated with premonitions from my grandmother because she had some great ones. And they were great, but they were also terrible. And that's the thing with premonitions. Sometimes and sometimes you can't do anything about it. And I'll give you an example of that when I come back, because it is really amazing, what my grandmother did. And she did everything she could to stop my uncle from dying. And she didn't succeed because he wouldn't listen. So we are about to go to a break. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about my grandmother and her premonitions. And so all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Paratalk Radio is your one-stop for all things paranormal, the unknown, and the supernatural. Join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for discussions and guests on topics such as ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. This broadcast is rated M for mature and intended for listeners over 16 on paratalkradio.com.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fultz. I'm coming to you from Alabama and coming to you from my cute little tiny home near Pensacola, Florida. And we're talking premonitions of death omens, of death spirits, and I'm going to talk about my grandmothers and stuff like that, all of her premonitions, but I'm going to talk a little bit to get it out of my brain while I'm thinking about it, the death omen spirits, which are different than the spirits you're seeing that are trying to get you to go on to see Jesus, death omen spirits function around us. And when we're getting closer to death or that we're going to go through an experience, sometimes they pop up because they already see the time, they already sense it's coming, and they're more like an elemental spirit. So they will come and let you know sometimes, and then there are some that the more scarier looking ones that they just come and they're like parasites. They just eat the energy of your degrading life and degrading things that are happening. You're shedding information. You're shedding energy all the time, like a snake sheds skin, and then it kind of degrades and becomes, like the oil. Like I said, like we're shedding this stuff like skin, and it just seeps down, and then we wade through it a little bit, and a Death Omen spirit will come around, absorb some of that energy, or and then you can tell that something's about to happen to you because you're attracting these strange spirits. Now, the first real experience I had when I was helping an aunt with her husband's father-in-law, and they had a very haunted house. I wanted to experience it. I think I've had this on one of the shows here before, but I wanted to get over my fear of anything spooky. So I moved in this house. They called this thing, they gave it a name. They thought it was a pet, and they call it Gertrude. And what it was one time they owned the house. They moved away from the house. They rented it out. The person who rented it out was a self-styled magical person, and they were scary kind of magical person, and they were scaring the neighbors, and they liked to scare people, and they were killing local pets and using them and all that stuff. And there's very few of those around, but this was one of them. And the room that became my bedroom was where she had her circle and did her stuff, and when she left it running. So it was all constantly things running out of the walls, running down the halls, running past you. You could hear, if you were downstairs, you'd hear them running up the stairs, running across the bedroom floor where I was. And there was a spirit named Gertrude that they call Gertrude. And she would appear out of the corner and just come up to the foot of your bed. And if you told her to go away, she'd go away. She was a fetch. She would go get information. If you were a witch, you could send her to get information or take a spell or, whatever. And they would talk about this spirit, this woman coming up and standing at their bed, and they thought she was like a pet. And anytime they talked about moving, she'd cry. You could hear her crying in the walls. So I thought, I got to see this stuff. So I moved in this place, which it was in the 80s. And it wasn't so great, because, she would come up to the foot of the bed. You see this woman in a beige, dowdy dress, and she had this long black braid over her right shoulder, but her face was smudged out. She would have her hands crossed, and she'd stand there like she was waiting for you to tell her something. So I would tell her to go away, and she would dissolve back into the blackness. When she would come, the corner would get dark, and she'd appear out of it, go to the foot of the bed, and she'd go back. But the other spirits there or things, is my first experience really was, my first thing where I knew they were called shadow people. And, but there were just huge amounts of these shadow people that, you would just see them. They were just everywhere. And they were freaky. And if you were downstairs, they'd run past you, and they'd run up and all this stuff. Or, you just, it was just crazy stuff. And, but the last thing that happened to me in that house, because my cousin wanted to come see the ghosts, and her mother and them had gone to Florida to see other relatives, and she came in to see it, and she was scared to sleep by herself. So she is now in the world of the dead. So she's not here for me to get her to tell her side of it. But she was sleeping in her parents' room. And she didn't want me to leave her alone in that room. And we had already had a couple of experiences, so I knew it was going to be active. So there was this space between the bed and a dresser. So I made a pallet, made a little bed in between the bed and the dresser. And she went to bed, went to sleep, snoring, within minutes. She was just out. She felt secure because I was there. So I was sitting there trying to go to sleep because I have a terrible time sleeping. And all of a sudden I felt like I'd been given a drug. I couldn't move. And this spirit appeared at the foot of the bed, at the foot of my feet. And it looked like a man, a shadow of a man, like a cardboard cutout. And he had a fedora on, which, there are spirits at the crossroads, especially in voodoo, of these men with derby hats and fedoras. And so I was looking at this cutout of this man, and then out of the center of his body, it just like the blob, it just flowed out this blob of black gooey stuff that covered me. And it filled the space in between the bed. And it looked like, looking up through it, it looked like black marmalade with little gray scratches in it. And out of his center came this bulbous gray head with big eyes. And it pushed up and it tried to push into my face. It was trying to get in my body. And I said, my cousin's name was Judy. I went, Judy, something's here and I can't move. And she woke up. She didn't see it, but she saw the cover on the edge of the bed waving like it was floating in water. And she screamed so hard that thing went zoop and was gone. And I said, okay, it's when it can touch me and I can't move, I'm out of here. So I left, I got out of there. And it was like a year before my attack. So, and later on when I looked at it, I thought, I think that was some kind of death omen. And it was already realizing something was going on, and it was trying to scare me, trying to absorb, it knew I was going to die. So it was trying to get in the body so it could eat until I dropped. And another premonition spirit, during that time when I was living there, I had a cousin living in North Carolina, and she had a beautiful 200-year-old cabin. And we were coming back from somewhere, and they were tearing up the cabin. They were remodeling, and so we came in the dark, and it was dark. There was no light, and we were feeling our way, trying to get into the cabin, and it was on what used to be Irish land. Our settlers there. There was lavender everywhere. And this scream starts coming across the field and scared the hell out of us. Sounded like a woman. And of course, mountain lions do it, but this sounded a little different than a mountain lion. We about killed ourselves getting in that house. And I said, that was a banshee. Somebody's going to die. And that weekend, another cousin of ours, another first cousin, had been murdered by his wife for insurance money. So that was an omen, and not a good one. But, it let us know something was happening. So, I've seen several of those kind of things in my life, and I know when I see them, the last real one that I saw was one of my nephews. My sister was pregnant with one of my nephews. And she had seizures, and we didn't know if something was going to happen, if the baby was going to make it or come out, have problems. She turned out all right. But we were discussing this. I was discussing this with a friend, and a black dog appeared on the side of the road on our left side and crossed over the road, and it didn't have eyes. that, where its eyes were. It was kind of like it's just this light. And it looked at us, and then it evaporated. And I went, well, there's something special with that. And my nephew was born all right, but he was born with the spirit of a uncle who I'm going to talk about, who was killed when he was 25 in 1950. And that was my grandmother's big premonition. And that happened. His name was Chick. His name was Charles, but they called him Chick. He was born on November 1st. Not November 1st, Thanksgiving. And they called him Chick. And he liked to go, he had a big Packard. This is 1950. He had a Packard. He was always running around, and he was living with my grandparents in this big house. And him and his friends were going to go see a brother who lived in a place called Spring City, about an hour and a half away. And my grandmother, who was so psychic, she goes, if you leave, you're never coming back. You're going to die. Don't go. And he thought, and they were so stubborn, so you couldn't tell. It's like my mother, she'd say, you can't tell me what to do. And he was the same way. He said, oh, Mama, you're being stupid and silly. And she was going, no, please don't, you won't come back. And his friend that was with him, named Clayton, said, don't worry, Miss Swearingen, I'll be with him, he'll be safe. And they left, and she was so upset they couldn't get her to go to bed. She always went to bed like at daybreak. She put a chair so she could face the door to see him coming in, and she wouldn't get to bed. And it caused a lot of drama because it was such a big deal. And she was talking to my uncles and saying, he's going to be dead. He's dying. He's going to die. And they were just thinking she was being stupid. And at 2 a.m, we had relatives who were in the funeral home, the Coulter funeral home. They called her and said, Laura, Chick's dead. He had a wreck. And she knew it. She was sitting there waiting in the chair. She knew he was dead. And she called my Uncle Bill and said, and had the relative, they came to my grandmother's door because they were relatives. And they had come to her door to tell her he was dead. He had had a car wreck, and he had died instantly. All three of them had died instantly. And she called my Uncle Bill and let Allie Coulter talk to him. And he said, oh, Allie, I'm so glad you're there. Tell Mama, yeah, she's being silly. And they said, no, Chick's dead. He's been dead about an hour. And and then I have photographs of my uncle in the casket, because they used to do like the Victorians, take pictures of the dead. I have a picture of him in his casket. And she had begged him. She cried and begged him, and he went anyway. So that spirit reincarnated into my nephew. That the dog thing happened. So I knew there was going to be something weird about it. And so as he got older, his friend, he had an invisible friend named Charlie. And Charlie was Chick, spirit. And he would laugh at Charlie's jokes. And he didn't have any friends, so he had Charlie. And my other nephew, whose name is Clayton, was the name of he's the reincarnation of the friend who was killed that told my grandmother, don't worry, I'll take care of him. They reincarnated together as my nephews, and they both are challenged. They both have problems. But they reincarnated from that. My grandmother, that was a dramatic premonition. And so after that, I was like, if she tells me a rock's going to follow me, I know it's going to follow me. And it's not the end of her premonitions. But when we come back from break, I'll try and get the get a couple more of hers in, and my mother's, because my mother had premonitions. She didn't consider herself a psychic, but she was. And, but she had a different way of thinking about it. They didn't know what to do. So we're going to go to break. And when I come back, I'll finish up with some more premonitions and wind up the Death Spirits and Death Omens talk. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fultz, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm coming to you from my tiny little house near Pensacola. We're talking about premonitions and death spirits and death omens. Death omens are a little separate than death spirits, because I've been through it upset with people, and they start seeing dead people right before their death time. And those are different than death omens. Now, sometimes they can be a death omen because you're starting to see dead people. So that means your death is pretty close, or you're pretty near. The veil is getting thin. And when I was seeing dead people, because I was seeing someone sitting by me, and then I saw the people who were separate that were in the consciousness that were there, and I knew they were dead people, dead spirits, or spirits, maybe not dead spirits, but dead spirits of dead people that I knew. And that was a little different than these death omens. But then, when you're starting to go, or they start to go, if you talk to a hospice nurse, they'll tell you people start talking and seeing dead people a lot before they die. And then they help them go through. So that's the death spirits. Now, my grandmother that I was telling you about with my Uncle Chuck, when her mother and her were very, very close. They'd been through a lot of trauma. Her father had been killed when she was about 6. He had been killed in a lumber accident. And so she already had trauma. She was very psychic at that time. But her mother, and it was in 1918, her mother was very sweet, but she had appendicitis. And if they didn't get to it in time, a lot of people died from appendicitis because it would give you septic, make you poisoned, and then you would die. And she was struggling. She had an appendicitis at first, and she was in the hospital on the 3rd floor. And my grandmother was going to see her. It was like in March in Chattanooga, and it was icy. And my grandmother was 3 months pregnant. And she slipped on the ice on her way to see her mother. So they took her into the hospital. She was in a hospital bed. The floor and the room beneath her mother who was dying. And she didn't know if her baby was going to make it. She was hoping it would. And she was laying there and said that she saw her mother's spirit come from above, because her mother was in the room above, come down, come next to her, take the baby in her arms, and go back up through the ceiling. And that was right before they came in and told her that her baby was dead. She had lost the baby, or that, she had miscarried. And then her mother died that night. And so she had that premonition, but she said it made her feel at peace because she knew her mother was all right. She came and got the baby and took it, and they were fine. Now, my mother, who didn't think of herself as psychic, but she had some psychic moments in the 70s, about 1975. My sister had a friend she would go visit with, and Friday nights she'd go and stay with her. And her name was Pam, and my sister's name was Robin. And Pam's parents, her mother and father, and there was a little brother, and the father was an alcoholic. And when he wasn't drinking, he was a very sweet guy. And my mother would let Robin go and stay with Pam. And if the father was having a problem, they would go over and stay with the aunt next door. And so my sister asked to go spend the weekend with Pam. And my mother, who always said yes to her, said, I have this bad feeling you're not going. I'm not letting you go. Now, my sister, who had a little bit of a primitive emotional thing, if she got upset, she got real upset. So before it was over, I remember her crying and screaming and begging and, and my mother just would not give in, which was not typical of my mother with my sister, because she was like the terrible tyrant, and so my mother would usually give in to her, and she wouldn't let her go. She said, I just have this terrible feeling, so you're not going. So what happened is that night, the mother and the little brother had gone to visit someone else, another relative. Pam went to stay with the aunt next door because the father came home and he was drunk. And he sat on the couch, took a shotgun, put it into his mouth, shot himself. The next morning, Pam got up, ran over there to, get breakfast for him and everything, and found him in that state. And at the funeral home, when we were there later, I heard her describe what she saw, and it's something that children don't need to see. And my mother had saved my sister from experiencing that trauma. She wouldn't have been able to handle it. So, because she really wasn't mature enough, they were only 12 and 13, kind of ages. So it stopped her from having that horrible experience. So that's where premonitions can save you, can help you. In my case, before my attack, I kept having this premonition, the spirits were calling me, everything, and I just didn't know what to look for. I wasn't developed enough. Now I'd go, oh, Mark is not going anywhere. If my uncle had listened to my grandmother, he could have lived to be old, maybe. But since he wouldn't listen, and she had that premonition so hard and begged him, and he went anyway because he was so stubborn. and it cost them their lives, the three of them. And they just poo-pooed her psychic thing, and it wouldn't have killed him to stay home. He was just going to go visit a brother. It wasn't like an important thing. They just were killing time. And one friend who went, they dropped him off on the way there so he could see his children because he was divorced. And that was the last time his children got to see him. And he got back in the car when they came back. Then they got killed. They ran into a bridge in the rain, and they hit it at such force. It was a Packard, which was a huge car. And the front was taken to the back. The engine was taken to the back. So my uncle, when they opened the door, he fell out because every bone in his body was broken. The friend Clayton, who was sitting in the center, the engine went with him through to the back, killed him instantly. The other guy that was in there that was just along for the ride that had seen his children, he had gotten thrown from the car, and his arm was cut off. But he was thrown into the creek, and he might have lived, but a piece of the car engine or the car part fell on him, and he drowned. So, in a way, I don't think that they were able to escape their death. I think it was meant. It's like, for me, I was being warned, but it was meant for me to go through what I went through. And if I died, I would have felt like it was, well, my time. And it wasn't my time. But I feel like the way things happened to them, maybe it was their time. And the premonition my mother had, it kept my sister safe, but it wasn't able to stop what happened. It just warned her about what was happening. And like I said, some spirits, there are death omen spirits that will give you an inkling, like that banshee sounding thing that was telling us my cousin was about to be murdered. You know, not that we could have done anything about it, but I knew it was somebody was going to die. And at the haunted house I used to live in, where Gertrude was, we had two uncles die in July in the same month. And I was going up the steps on one of it, and there was this cloud of stuff, and I heard this voice say, "Get your suit, your Navy suit, and your shoes out." And that was, at the time, that's all I wore to funerals. And I told my mother, I said, something's happening. They told me, get my suit out. And I said, somebody's going to die. A few days later, my Uncle Rice died. And we had another Ed, another uncle named Ed. And I'll swear to you, not a week later, we had this storm. And I heard this horrible sound outside. And there was a hawk. And it was injured. And there was this ring of cats sitting around looking at this hawk. And I ran outside to shoo him off and see if I could help the hawk. I got close to the hawk. The hawk looked me in the eyes, screamed, and dropped dead. And I went, well, somebody's died. My next uncle died. He died from a heart attack. So sometimes you can't do anything about the premonition. Sometimes, like in my mother's case, she averted a problem. And one time when I was on a bus, when I was in my 20s, I was about to get off the bus, and I heard a voice say, "Stop." And I stopped when the door opened, and up above us, the electrical wires broke for whatever reason and fell right where I would have been standing. So it stopped me from getting a curly hairdo. So listen to your intuition. Listen to other people's intuition. And if you get a warning, kind of pay attention. Be a little cautious. That's what it's for. It's nature's way of letting us try and stay safe. And then sometimes it's just to let us know something is going to happen dramatically that you need to prepare for so that you're not taken unaware. And if you become more of a metaphysical person like myself, I hate it when people I love die. I hate it when animals I love die. But I know it's okay. I know that they're okay. I know that they're not really gone. They're still functioning. That's what energy is. Energy doesn't stop and for anything. The body will. The body will stop. But the body is busy being energy of a different sort. It breaks down into dirt. It breaks down into all this different stuff, into gases and minerals, and the body already has a preset to go, okay, you're dead. Let's do this. This is how it's going to disintegrate. The spirit, the mind has coordinates. Well, okay, you're dying, so let's do this gamma oscillation. Let's get your memory downloaded. Let's get you ready to jump the shark, before the body quits, so that you're not stuck in this body. And then when the body falls over and goes to where it is, the spirit just moves on and downloads. And, so pay attention to premonitions. Don't poo-poo people when they say, I have this feeling, I have this dream about you. I want you to be careful. Be careful. And it may be something you can avert. It may be something you can help somebody with. You may be able to save somebody else. Then again, it might be a forewarning. So it's just nature. The spirits are telling you, oh, here it comes. This person's about to leave. So say goodnight to them. Sometimes there have been people that I knew something was going to happen, and I was able to have really heartfelt conversations with them and tell them how I felt. They didn't have to think about what I felt when they died. They knew how I felt. Then there have been people I knew something was going to happen, but I knew they wouldn't be receptive to it, and then they died. And they didn't know how I felt. And so I talk to my spirits, I talk to the energies, I talk to the spirits and tell them how I feel. And that way they know whether I could tell them physically. Because like I said again, we're a little flame. Our soul is a little flame. And it goes back to that consciousness. And that little flame always listens. That consciousness has that little cord that goes to us. It's our umbilical cord to the other side. They always listen. They're always watching you. They're always trying to help us. And they're always trying to prepare us. Because things are going to happen in this life. Horrible things. Children die. Parents die. Things happen. But understand that they're okay. And if there's personalities hanging on and not being okay, you can help that too. You can talk the personality, to go where the soul is, to let go, to understand that if you want to do this, you're going to have to go and transition, and then you can come back. So we're just a little eternal flame coming back, coming forth. And live your life. But don't be afraid of death. Don't be afraid of psychic abilities. Don't be afraid of someone else's psychic abilities. And, we're coming to the end of our show. I hope that you enjoyed the show. I have been waiting 2 weeks to tell you this stuff. So I hope that you enjoyed this, even though some of it might be disturbing. To me, it's a very important thing. Because every time I do these things, I'm always reminded, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's just the tide. We're going out with the tide, coming in with the tide. A baby's born, the tide comes in. We become an adult, we die, the tide goes out. And we go back to the consciousness. So remember, you're an eternal flame. It never ends. It's never over. They're never gone. Now, once again, if anyone wants to meet me in person, contact me at Live and Let Live Metaphysical Store. Like, give me about 24 hours notice and make sure I can be there. And I want to thank you all. I want to thank Kat Hobson and Teal Gray for getting me hooked up in this show. I want to thank you for listening. And I hope that you enjoyed and learned something from this. That's part of my life. I feel like I get to teach what I learned. So now we're going to have to say goodnight until the next show. So until next Thursday, good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.